Kakadosh Boker Or Masechet Bava Metzia Daf Amud Aleph 17a1. The Gemara was just mentioning the entire concept of that if he right now comes and he says Parati is going to be believed, but if the Malve comes and he wants to write it, we don't write it for him. If he says Chayav Atali tell me and then he says Parati, he's not going to be believed. But if the Malve comes to write the Darchata, so therefore we're going to write it. Okay, and this is where we left off. Rav Zvid. Okay, so Rav Zvid comes is the fourth line down. Okay, Rav Zvid Mishmed Rav Nachman Amar. Rav Zvid, in the name of Rav Nachman, comes and he says like this: Ben tze v'tenlo. Whether Bedin come and they say go out and give it to him, Ben chayav tenlo, or whether Bedin come and they say that you're obligated to give it to him. Ve'amar parati, and he says that I paid it up. Ne'eman, he's going to be believed. Why? A person comes and he pays, even if they just say chayav tenlo. Okay. So therefore, ba malve lichtov adarchata. So if the malve is going to come and he's going to write this adarchata, and kotvim v'notninu, we don't write it and give it to him because maybe you already paid it up. Meaning, if you already paid it up, how are you going to come and start writing a document that you could collect and all these things? Maybe he paid it. Ela rather, iika lefaluge, right? Hachi udika lefaluge. If you already want to differentiate, you could differentiate like this. Amrulo, if they told him tsetenlo, if they told him go out and pay him, and then he says, I paid him already after a little while. And then the Dim come and they say, no, he didn't pay it back. So he's considered a kafran. Okay? Chayav litenlo. But if they say you're obligated to pay him back, they didn't tell him go out and give it to him. But rather they told him, chayav litenlo. And he says, parati after a little bit of time. And the medim shelo para, right? Lo kafran lo tomamon. He's believed that really be'emet he did pay it back. Okay? Even though he didn't do it immediately. Right? It's not like a for sure that he didn't actually do it. Now, my time, what's the difference? Because he's trying to get out of it. Because he thought to say that, listen, I don't need to pay until the Rabbanan come and they start need to make a for sure psak. Meaning, tse v'telom is a psak. Go and pay him right now. Chayav v'telom means you have to pay. But now the rabbis are going to come, they're going to start looking into it. So he thinks until the rabbis come and they start looking into it, I have time to come and to get the money in order to pay it back. Amar Rabbi Rechan Amar Yochanan. Says Rabbi Rechan Amar Yochanan. Manale biyadcha ve'ala omer en lecha biyadi klum. Imagine I come and say, you owe me $100, and the guy says, well, I don't owe you anything. I have nothing of yours. Va'edim me'idim oto sheyesh lo. Now the edim come and they say, no, he does owe him. Ve'chazar ve'amar, and then afterwards he comes and he says, parati. Huchsa kafran lo tomon. Why? The fact that he says that I don't owe you anything, and now he changes, he says, I paid you back. One second. He's a kafran. Why is he kafran? He's renouncing. He says that he doesn't owe anything. We don't believe him. Okay? Ki had Shabtai bered Rabbi Marinos. Just like Shabtai, the son of Rabbi Marinos. Katav la lekalate itztela dimilta biktubah. Right? So imagine right now, he wrote to his daughter-in-law, right, in the ketubata, that there's going to be a levush of tzemer naki, which means that she came in and she brought in as a nedunya, as a dowry, and it was written. The kablale, and he accepted it. Irkas ketubata, the ketubah was lost. Amar lehu, so Shabtai came and he told the Bedin, lo yudvarim me'olam, what are you talking about? It never existed. She never brought in anything. So atu sadeh ve'amris, witnesses came and they said, yes. Katavla, right? So therefore, right, he has to write it. Then he says, right, lesof, amar lehu at the end, he said, pirati, I already paid it already. Ata lekameh de Rabbi Chia, they came in front of Rabbi Chia. Amar le, he said, uchzakta kafran lo to itztela. The second that you said that it didn't exist, that she brought it into the dowry, doesn't exist. Meaning the olden days, they used to come and write down, okay, so she brought in this. Nowadays, we actually say amount of money. So he says she brought into the wedding, whatever it is, however amount of money, right, that she brought in. It's called the nedunya, right, the dowry. So he has to pay the back to her. But if she brought in money to the wedding, so therefore he has to pay the back. So Amar Rabbi Avin, Amar Rabbi La, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Says Rabbi Avin, name Rabbi La, name Rabbi Yochanan. Haya chayav lechavro shavua. Imagine right now you owe your friend a shavua. Ve'amar, and he says, nishpati, I swore. Ve'edim me'idim, they said, what are you talking about? You never swore. Yeah, uchza kafran, not a shavua. So therefore he's going to be a kafran for that shavua. Why? Because now, even after, not only did he not swear, he's not believed anymore. Because if the witnesses said that he never swore, so then that's it. This guy is a kafran. So Amru HaKamed Rabbi Avu. They went and they said this in front of Rabbi Avu. Ve'amarlo, when he told them, Mistabra milta de Rabbi Avin. It's logical, the words of Rabbi Avin. Shenitchayev shivua bebedin. We're talking about that he was chayav a shavua in the bedin. For example, modeh b'miktzat. You remember we spoke about this a lot of times already. Modeh b'miktzat, you admit to part of the partial claim, right? You have to do shavua in the bedin. Aval chayev atzmo shavua. But if he just came and he said, even though I don't need to swear, I'm going to swear, right? Ne'eman, he is believed. He's not going to be considered a kafran. So avid inish the mikre ve'amar, because a person many times they'll come and they'll say, lo yesela ma shechivu bedin, and not shechiyavti et atzmi. Meaning, a lot of times people will say, listen, I only have to do what Beddin tell me to do. I'm not going to do whatever, I obligate myself. Beforehand, I was a nice guy. When I see how you act, I don't want to do that anymore. Okay, so Adrua kamed Rabbi Avin. He went in front of Rabbi Avin. And he says, Ana nami Beddin amri. I was also talking about Beddin. Meaning, we were never talking about it if it was outside of Beddin. It was only in Beddin. So if in Beddin I come and I'm obligated Shavua, and then I come and they say that I did it, and obviously witnesses say, what are you talking about? There was no Shavua done. So obviously then you're a Uchzak Kafran for the Shavua, and obviously it does not work. But again, we're talking about in the Beddin, and you are obligated by the Beddin. Okay? Itmar Nami was also stated, Amar Rabbi Avin, Amar Rabbi Ila, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Says Rabbi Avin, name Rabbi Ila, name Rabbi Yochanan. Hayach hayav l'chavero Shavua beVedin. A person was obligated a Shavua to his friend, the Shavua in the Bedin. Ve'amar, and he says, Nishbati, that I swore, Va'edim me'edim oto shelo nishba, and the Edim come and they testified that there was no Shavua. Right? So what happens? Uchzak kafran le'ota Shavua. He's going to be uchzak kafran for that Shavua. So Amar Ravasi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Says Ravasi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Hamotzeh shtar chov. What?
Bedin doesn't have a record. You say Shavua Bedin. Why do they care about the din? You have Bedin.
They don't always have a record.
Yeah,
here we're talking about,
please.
they don't always have a record. Yeah? So Amar Ravasi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Hamotzeh shtar chov b'shuk. If you find a shtar chov in the shuk, וכתוב בו impek, and it's written impek, וכתוב בו זמנו בו ביום, and it's written the זמן of that day, יחזירו לבעלים, they're going to give it back. משום כתב ללוות ולא לווה. Because at the end of the day, they wrote ללוות, meaning that maybe he only wrote it to borrow the money, but he never actually borrowed it. So, הכתוב בו impek, it's written impek. ואם משום פירעון, and if it's only going to be פירעון, לפריעה בת יום הלא חשינן. Right, we're not going to come, right, and we don't suspect that they paid, right, on the same day. Right? We don't suspect that. Meaning, since the shtar was on that day, we're not going to suspect that he paid. Meaning like this, is it normal that somebody is going to borrow money and the same day they pay it back? It's unusual. Again, everything is possible, but it's very, as I said, it's unusual. Right?
Yeah, it's very
what?
common.
No. One more time. First of all, the majority of those times, it's done balpeh. It's not done a shtar. I would never come and make you a shtar if you're going to pay me back today. Doesn't make sense.
No, Rabbi, I don't think that's in the market.
Amarle Rabbi Zera al Ravasi. Says Rabbi Zera to Rabbi Yasi. Miyamar Rabbi Yochanan Haki. Does Rabbi Yochanan actually say such a thing? Right? Ha'atu de'amart mishmed Rabbi Yochanan. You yourself, you say this in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Shtar shelavabo ufra'o. A shtar that you borrow, and then afterwards you come and you pay it afterwards. Eno chozev v'lovel. You can't come and use it again. Why? There's no shibud anymore. So, for example, right? That's what Mordechai said before, right? He comes, somebody wants to borrow $500. So he comes, he borrows it, pays it back. He comes and he says, you know what, can I borrow $500? You know what, let's just use the last shtar. Remember, the shtar, let's use the last shtar, meaning the glass document, let's use the exact same thing, the exact same amount. No, because once it was nimchal al shibud, now you have to make a new shibud. So say the one second. When do you want to do it? Eimat, when is the case? If you're going to tell me now it's the next day, right, or the day afterwards, my idea, right, what are we talking about now? It's a mistake, right, because of the date. Meaning this is called, right, a shtar mugdam. Utnan, we already learned in the Mishnah, okay, that what? Shtarei chova mugdamim is pasul. Why is it going to become pasul? Because, so why do you have to come at nimchal al-shibud? Forget about Nimchal HaShibud. The second that it's a document which was predated, it's a problem. Elalav, but rather, Biyomeh. We're talking about the same day. Alma Pane Inish Biyomeh. So ask the Gemara, you see, one second. If we're talking about that, we're going to say that you can't use the same document. So obviously we're talking about the same day. So it comes out that you borrowed the 500 from Mordechai, you paid him back, and then you want to borrow again the same day, another 500. And I guess you want to pay him back again the same day, I guess. Right? But basically the concept is that it does happen, that you'll actually come and you'll do that. So Elmaleh comes and he tells him, Kika amina de lo pare klal, right? De lo shchiche inche de pare biome kamina. I didn't say that the guys are going to pay it at all. I just said that it's not normal to pay. It's not common to pay it the same day. Right? So since it's not common, I don't suspect for it. So therefore, if I find the document like that, I give it back. Maybe you paid it back, but it's not common. Again, everything can happen, right? But it's not common. So we do things according to the common occurrences. Okay? Rav Kahana comes and he says, Keshchayav modeh. We're talking about with the guy that's obligated, he admits that he didn't pay back. So since he admits that he didn't pay back, that's why it makes sense, you're going to give it back. So says the Gemara, what's the chidushan? If the guy comes and he says, I still owe the money, so what's the chidush that you give it back? The shtar. Obviously, he still owes the money. Says Gemara, no. I would have thought to say, maybe he paid this document. And that's what he said he didn't pay back. Because he wants to borrow and he wants to use it again. And he's suspecting of money of the sofer. Right? Kamashmalan, that comes to teach you, if so, malve gufe lo shavak. The malve himself will not want to do that. Savar shame berabbanan mafsid, because they'll hear about it, and then I'm going to lose out. So it's not going to work. Which means like this, and this is what I told you before. Don't think that doing a milve b'shtar is that easy. Usually they would have to go to the bedin, and they would have to do it properly. Even nowadays, by the way, right? If it's a Mickey Mouse, so then yeah, you'll write it yourself and everything. When you want a real loan, and you want to do a real loan, you don't do it by yourself. You get lawyers, you get this. Now, every single time you do that, it's money. So therefore, you're going to think to yourself, 1 second, does it really make sense that I'm going to come? First of all, if it's small amounts, does it make sense that I'm going to come and I'm going to do that? I'm going to pay more to the lawyer than the actual debt, number one. Number two also, does it pay back if he's going to pay me back the same day? If he's going to pay me back the same day, usually it doesn't make sense. So you'll try to do it in a different way, much easier. But to make a document, that's not common. So therefore, here he comes and he says, really, Be'emet, the guy comes and he says, I still owe him the money. Why did he say that? He doesn't want to come and pay the sofer again. So what does he do? He comes and says, I still owe him the money. He already paid it back. Now what happens? He comes and he tells the lender, by the way, lend me the money again. He says, yeah, but we need a document. We have the document. I said I didn't pay it back, so they give you back the document. Here you have the document. Lend me the money again. So I'm saving the money of the sofer. Says the Gemara, we don't suspect that. Why? Because the malve doesn't want to do that. Because the malve says, if the rabbis hear what just happened, they're going to disqualify it, and then I lose out. So I don't want to lose out. And because I don't want to lose out, that's why it's not going to help. Okay? So says the Gemara, Ma'ishna mehaditnan. Right? The question is, what's the difference between that which we learned in the Mishnah? If you find a debt document, if there has nachayut nechasim, you don't give it back. We're talking about kishechayav modeh, which means that he agrees. And only because of the date of the difference, meaning that maybe you only wrote down in Nisan, but really meant the date that the actual transaction took place in Tishri. And then he's going to take the properties in the middle, and that's going to be Shelo Kadin. You remember one more time, if right now I come and I write down Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and what was the real transaction? Rosh Chodesh Tishri. Between Nisan and Tishri, there's a good 6 months. During those 6 months, if I come and I already, let's say, for example, come and I sold the property, you could come afterwards, come and say, he owes me the money first. I have a debt document, here it is, give me the property. Now, technically speaking, when did the loan take place? Tishri, in 6 months, not now. So how could he collect in the middle? So because of that problem, we don't give it back. So says the Gemara, there we don't say, there we don't say that. 1 second, the malve is going to say, we have to do it again, because I don't want that the rabbis should hear about it, then I'm going to lose out. Meaning there, we don't suspect that the malve is going to say, you know what? It doesn't exist, because if something like this is going to happen, I'm the one losing out, so I don't want that. So the malve says, you want the money? Write me a new document. And we didn't say that. So what's the difference? So the Gemara answers, Amri, we said, Hatam mishum di le ravcha. There the malve is gaining money. Right? Why? Because he's using the same document. The katarif lekuchom nisan vatishri menach nichalei velomar velomidit. So therefore, since right now he could come and he could take the lekuchot from Nisan until Tishri, it's actually good for him. So therefore, that's why he's not going to say anything. Hacha by us, though, in the case of Rabbi Yochanan, he's not gaining anything. The sof shtar ha'ina hiktiv, because right now you have a document right now. So there's no lekuchot here. So bishtar shenimchal shibudo lo shavik. So therefore, he's not going to let it. Which means like this: the malve, if he has a gain, so then he'll also do this. If he has a gain. But if he has no gain, it doesn't make sense. The borrower is the one that's paying the sofer. So if the malve is the one that's lending the money and he's not losing out, he's going to say, you want to do it properly. But if he's gaining as well, so then he'll keep his mouth quiet. Why? Because, you know what, it's good for me also. Why not? So therefore, in the case of the Nisan until Tishri, it's good for him, so he'll keep his mouth quiet. Right? But in the other case, right, which was the case of the how do you call this? Of the debt, right now, he's not getting anything. He's not getting anything. You want the money, no problem. Come. Bechavot, show it. Yeah, give me a new document. Okay? Nekuda. Amar, these are the two dots, okay? Fine. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Says Rabbi Chia bar Abba in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Hatoen achar maaseh bedin. What happens if a person comes and he's toen after the maaseh bedin? Yudzanim ubet. Lo amar krum. He didn't say anything. Which means, if you already were obligated in a bedin money, right, which is actually going to be t'nai bedin, right, that he's going to be mechuyav, right, every single person, midin Torah u'takana chachamim. So, for example, let's say it's a ketubah that he's obligated to his wife, or mezonot of the wife, and he says, I paid it back. He's not going to be believed. Now, even though the woman is not asking it, and it was actually going to be a balpeh, and not bishtar and everything, right, it's not like every other milvel balpeh. My tama, what's reasoning? Kol maaseh bedin keman denak ishtar b'yadin. Because when it's a maaseh bedin, it's like you have a shtar. Okay? So, Amar le Rabbi Chia bar Abba Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Chia bar Abba to Rabbi Yochanan, Ve'lo mishtantenu izo. That's a Mishnah. The Mishnah says Masechet ketubot, a woman that's a get and it doesn't have the ketubah, she's going to collect the ketubah. Why? Because the husband is not believed to say parati, right? He's not believed to say that I paid it up already, even if, right, she doesn't have the ketubah. Why? Because the person comes and he says parati, it's against the maaseh bedin, and therefore it's not believed, because the maaseh bedin is that the person's chayav to give the ketubah. So Elmaleh, he answers, he loved the dilai la chaspa lo mashkacha maganita tuta. He says, if I wouldn't pick up the cheres from the ground, if I wouldn't pick up a piece of pottery, you wouldn't come and you wouldn't find a margalit, obviously. So therefore, if I wouldn't say after the maaseh bedin, it's nothing. So for you're right, then I had say that it's going to be covered, and obviously we're going to explain. So basically, what happened right now? We just said that anytime that there's going to be a maaseh bedin, it's kilu that they have the shtar in their hands. So we asked, that's our Mishnah. The Mishnah says that if a woman takes out a get, and then there's no ketubah, so therefore she collects the ketubah. Why? Because we don't believe him to say that he already paid it up. So answers Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, if I wouldn't have picked up the pottery, you would have never found the jewel, the diamond underneath. Which means the fact that now that I told you this halacha, now you could deduce it from the Mishnah. But really, be'emet, from the Mishnah by itself, you wouldn't have known that. Okay? So Amar Abaye comes and he says, my marganita, what is a margalit now? What is this jewel that we're talking about that is revealed in the Mishnah? So he says, Dilma, maybe maybe we're talking about where you don't write a ketubah. Right? Why? Right? The get, I know ketubah, but the get is the ketubah. Aval bimkom shekotvin ketubah, but in a place that you do write the ketubah, if she has a ketubah, she collects, and if she doesn't, she doesn't. So Hadar Abaye says, right? Lav minta hidamri. No, I apologize. Why? That which I said was nothing. But if you're going to tell me now, that we're talking about a place where they don't have a ketubah, that means they don't write ketubot. That if you do write a ketubah, so if you have the ketubah, you collect. You don't have the ketubah, you don't collect. What about almanah min harusin? When you have an almanah min harusin, how is she going to collect? Right? Why? Because usually the ketubah is only on the nisuin, not on the harusin. But the harusin is the beginning part. Right? When do you give over the ketubah? You give over the ketubah after they're already married. Correct? Nowadays, they don't do the ketubah, even if they sign it and they do all those things beforehand, the ketubah is only done after the kiddushin. First there's the irusin, which is the kiddushin. After the tabat and everything, now she's married, then they come and do the chuppah, and then they do the ketubah, and they give it over, and they say sheva blachot. But that's by nisuin. So therefore, what happens if you have an almanah from irusin? Almanah min irusin means that she got married, and the guy died, right? No, but it's real marriage for us. It's, okay, we call it, not Rabbanan, Doraita. Kiddushin, right? Kiddushin is Doraita, right? She did Kiddushin, right? But we call it Irusin, not the nowadays terminology of Irusin, but the Irusin of the Torah, which is Kiddushin. So she got married, and then he died. So now, in that case, there's no ketubah. So what's going to happen then? B'mai gavya, what's she going to collect? There was no ketubah. Be'edeh mitat bal. If you're going to come and tell me that it's the witnesses that the husband died, why didn't they say that they already paid her up? And now you're going to say, yeah, that's halacha really be'emet, that they're allowed to say parati. So then what did the Chachamim come? They instituted a ketubah for an almanah min urusin. If they could always just say that they paid it up, so what does it help giving a ketubah to an almanah? Okay, so obviously what we have to say is that since it's a maaseh bedin, they're not believed to say that they paid it up. Anytime that there's going to be a maaseh bedin, they're not believed to say that they paid it up. They have to actually bring a proof that they paid it up, because it's like kilu that the bedin are showing that really bemet she has to pay this. He has to pay this. Okay, fine. Says the Gemara. Amale mor kashisha beredar v'chasta l'Ravashi. Says mor kashisha, the son of v'chasta to Ravashi. V'almanah min urusin di'ila ketubah min alan. How do we know that almanah gets ketubah from the urusin? Usually, ketubah is only by nisuin. How do you know that almanah min urusin gets a ketubah? How do you know that? She became widowed after the marriage, after the kiddushin. Had the urusin. How do we know that she gets a ketubah? If you're going to tell me, because it's learned in ketubot, she collects everything. And there it's written, nitar mela ben menarusin, that she collects everything. Maybe that's only if he wrote her a ketubah. Meaning, if he came and he was a good guy and he wrote her a ketubah from then, so then you're right. Yeah, she gets it. If you're going to tell me now that no, that he actually did write it, so therefore he obligated himself, so then what's a chidushin, obviously? So says the Gemara, obviously this comes la'pukim der Bilazar ben Azariah. De'amar shelo katav la ela menat lekonsa. And that's a chidush. That's what we're talking about. Which means like this. Usually a person will only write a ketubah if he wants to get married to her. He would never give her a ketubah if he's not going to marry to her. Right? That's a kavanah. Meaning, for example, a person comes... What? He wanted to marry her. No. One more time. A person comes and he gets engaged. Remember, the engagement was the first step of marriage. He writes her ketubah. Is this ketubah an obligation or extra? It's extra, because mitzad the din, it only comes in after nisuin, right? Not now. But he wanted to do it. So now when he's writing this ketubah, that means not only that he's serious, but it's on the da'at that only if he gets married to her is he giving her this ketubah. Because it's not just stam, he's giving her ketubah. So now let's say they get divorced. Do you think in the right world he wanted to give her something extra? Obviously not. Right? Why? I'm sorry. He only wanted to... Obviously, he was being nice. He's showing a gesture. You know how it is. You want to show you're a gentleman. You're a good guy. It's not until after, but you want to show it at least, right? So therefore, so it makes sense. But that's only on dat lekunsa. That's only if he wants to come and he wants to get married to her. So here, misken, he did want to get married to her, but he dropped dead. Now it's not her fault. Is it her fault? Meaning, it's not that there was a fight. The guy died. So what? And he gave her the ketubah. So I would have thought to say that he was only al dat to get married to her. But here we don't say that. Why? Because at the end of the day, right? He showed that he really wanted, and it wasn't something in her that it was misken. His mazal. He dropped dead. You understand? Meaning it wasn't. So therefore, I would have thought to say. That's what he said. I would have thought to say that he doesn't have to pay her the ketubah because it was only al dat lekonsa. No, you do have to pay. And that's what it means. Gova et hakol. If you're going to tell me that he wrote it, so then that's gova et hakol. But if you're going to tell me that he didn't write her a ketubah, right? What does it mean gova et hakol then? Right? So manam matayim deit, right? Deitla. We're talking about the manam matayim, only that, not the tosefet, because he didn't obligate himself for more than that. So the chachamim, they only instituted the manam matayim. So obviously here we're talking about where he wrote her a ketubah, and therefore he obligated even the tosefet, and therefore there's no re'ayah from here that almanan rusin actually does get a ketubah. Meaning you can't bring a proof from here, because from the Mishnah it was mashma that he actually did write her a ketubah. So you're right. If he actually wrote her a ketubah, it's something completely different. Here we're talking about if he didn't write her a ketubah. That's a question. And then obviously we're going to have to continue, right, Be'ezrat Hashem, the next time.